Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back, but if you're new, welcome to the show. In this series every week, we speak to the biggest names in business all across the globe. We talk about their career stories, the lessons learned, how they've overcome challenges, and what success habits they practice. Practical advice to help you in your career. If you have a passion for business, then this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Elinor Moshe from Melbourne in Australia. Elinor is an ambitious and driven thought leader in the construction industry. Her passion to guide, inspire and direct future leaders and industry professionals led her to founding Australia's first construction coach called The Construction Coach. She is also the host of the Constructing You podcast, which is extremely successful and has just surpassed 100k downloads. She's also the #1 best-selling author of a one-of-a-kind book, Constructing Your Career. Her book offers practical, actionable and inspirational advice and insight to build an exemplary career. Elinor, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
My pleasure, Jason. It's great to be on the other side of the microphone.
Do you know what? Sometimes it's nicer to be on that side of the microphone. I've had this pleasure once or twice myself on that side, and I did love it. So, tell us a bit about your career, how it all kind of got started for you. Your business is really fascinating, and like I said in the intro, it is one of a kind. But before we come on to that and what you're doing at the moment, tell us how it all kind of got started for you.
Oh, thank you, Jason, and I appreciate the opportunity to lift the veil as to what alternative careers can look like, and that it certainly doesn't have to be a career that you conceived 10 years ago and think, well, this is the only thing that
Mm,
I need to be doing. I got to a point in my career, and I'm someone who is extremely career driven and extremely career focused, but I arrived at a certain destination and I felt extremely unfulfilled. I felt like I had the trappings of external success, and that's what people saw. You have a great career and, you're earning really well, but I was deeply unfulfilled and I was deeply unsatisfied. And I remember
mm.
one stark, cold morning rocking up to site thinking, this can't be it. Everything that I have pushed towards, and as ambitious as I am, this isn't all there is. And I started asking myself far more, well, back then, difficult questions, and I started getting better answers. And it was through quite a deep process of introspection that I conceived my vision. And it was through my vision in which I wanted to marry the two worlds that I really, really love, which is speaking and mentoring and construction. But of course, there was nothing of that nature which would afford me such a career path. So, nonetheless, I set along and I started my business, The Construction Coach, which of course has its own founding story. But it was through that which I knew that it would be the vehicle which will get me to where I want to go. It might not be the final vehicle, but it's the vehicle that I have at the moment. And once you do have a vision and just enough self belief in your idea and in yourself, and you'll roll the dice on yourself just once, the universe will bring around people and opportunities that will get you to where you want to go. And that's exactly how I met my mentor, Ron Malhotra, who showed me the third pathway of having a career. You can be a traditional employee, you can be a traditional entrepreneur, or you can become a thought leader. And Ron held up a mirror for me, not just to see who I am and really magnified that, but gave me a whole new world of a possibility. He let me rewrite the script to my own future, and everything that I experience today is really a culmination of some really, really good decisions that I made in August
Mm, mm.
2019 to take agency over my own career and know that I will back myself. I will not accept mediocrity, and I certainly will not stagnate in the face of my own ambition.
I love what you're saying. You're talking my language already. Stuff about the universe giving you this and rolling the dice. I love the language you're talking in, and it's right up my street. And I agree with you. I think I've also, without consciously realizing it, I went down the third path of being a thought leader. It wasn't a kind of a conscious thing. It just kind of happened for me. But really interesting to hear you talk about it. Was it just this kind of moment then that you arrived at this place one day and just thought, I'm not feeling happy, I'm not feeling fulfilled, and then you kind of took those steps to get there, or was it a bit more kind of gradual? How did it all kind of manifest itself?
Oh, that's a great question, Jason. It's like waves hitting the cliff shore. The cliff, sure. It happens gradually. You erode gradually. It doesn't happen all at once, but certainly over time, it's that silent power which ensures that you conform, that you work so hard to suffocate your soul. And that's exactly what I did. Over a long period of time, I tried so hard to fit in because I thought that's what you have to do when my natural prerogative is to stand out. It happened gradually,
Mm.
and that is the danger. It doesn't happen at once. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, "Oh, well, that's what happened yesterday." No, it's a silent killer. It suffocates you slowly. And over that time, I also gave up my power piece by piece because I had the wrong people in my life as mentors. Well, they were right at the time, but they could only provide so much for me. But I gave agency to them. I gave agency to other people. I gave agency thinking that my employer will have my best interests at heart and it is my employer who will self actualize for me.
I was going to say, you say something really interesting there, which is about
Yeah.
not fitting in and standing out. And, I think that's what kind of happened to me when I was in the police. They wanted someone who was like a robot, someone that, just fitted into the crowd. And I felt almost like smothered and suffocated by
Yes.
that. And I think that's such an interesting thing, and it's such an interesting analogy, the way you describe it with the sort of waves hitting the cliffs.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And, that's
Mm.
why I was feeling so dissatisfied. I was just like, I was happy. Of course, happiness is my job. Of course, I'm happy and grateful, but that doesn't mean you're fulfilled. And I stagnated and I stagnated big time when, I'm a Ferrari engine and I just stalled completely. And, we're not all we're Ferrari engines. There's so much that we can be doing, but there's just some
Yeah.
people who aren't meant to fit in boxes, and we're definitely not the people who are meant to hide behind titles or any of those, minuscule metrics that people assess career success by.
Yeah. You were driving like a Ford, but powered like a Ferrari. Um, that's really interesting. And, kind of when you did, start getting onto that path of you going out there and, doing the career that it is you felt that was gonna fulfill you, was it quite quick the way it took off and, the way you kind of went down that path? Did you find yourself almost like, I guess, you'd been taken off of the lead and allowed to run free. How did that kind of all feel at the time, and how did it all kind of go? Was it quite quick, your success, or?
In retrospect, yes. I mean, in 1 year, I've gone from just over a year, 14 months, I've gone from having, maybe 3,000 followers to over 20,000 followers on my social platforms, a best selling book, a podcast that is nearing, it is on 100 episodes and nearing 50,000 downloads. And they're just some of the metrics. Of course, there's the client metrics and the results that the client gets. So, I look at where I am right now and I'm like, look, I'm not where I want to be, but I am so far ahead of where I thought I would be had I not broken out of that convention. And of course, at the start, it was a moment, there were a few months where, of course, I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for my mentor, Ron, who
Mm, mm.
is my confidant and my best friend more than just a mentor. He showed me what was possible, but in the first few months I had to let go of the old paradigms and the old boxes and the old ways in which I saw things. And there is that moments of friction when everything that you thought was the truth, it comes crashing down. But I let it go and I let it come crashing down. And because I was able to do that really, really quickly, and I could actually see what for me is the truth, then I was really able to step into all of that really, really quickly. And I took the tools and the insights and the knowledge that my mentor provided me and I applied them because the transformation is actually in the execution. And that is one thing that I'm very, very good at is actually executing on something. I don't like shelf help, and that's why I don't read, everything because I'm not going to apply everything. My learning is deliberate and conscious. This is what I need
Mm.
right now. So I'm going to apply it right now. And that's how I get the transformation. So, in
That's
retrospect,
really interesting.
yeah, so in retrospect, yes, the transformation really happened quickly because I let it happen quickly. I did not get in my own way because I was invigorated. I came alive. I got hungry again and I got to be in full expression of myself.
Yeah.
And that is empowering.
The way you say a lot of things, we've had a very similar journey. I never had a mentor. To be honest with you, looking back now, I almost think to myself, how did I never ask anyone more experienced for help? But I just think that wasn't necessarily my DNA. But it's, and I always say to people now, you've got to find a mentor if you can. But I probably got to 4 years into owning a business, got into a multi-million-pound level, and then thought to myself, why have I never asked anyone for help? This is almost crazy. How did you find your mentor? How did he sort of come into your life? Because it sounds like he's been a massive inspiration and guiding hand along the way. How did you kind of come across one another?
I get asked this question a lot, and I'm actually going to post about it tomorrow morning, but the episode will come out after this. But A, divine intervention, but B, it was also, again, believing in my vision. So what happened, I started my business, the construction coach, and I'm like, okay, I have this idea and I have a blog. Okay, I need to get it out there. Okay, what can I do? I'll use LinkedIn. Great. I don't actually know how to really leverage LinkedIn in the right way. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just purely on LinkedIn and I got an event invitation to come to a LinkedIn event. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to be there. It was after work, middle of winter, and I booked a ticket. I didn't even look at the speakers. And I remember I walked into that room. It was in Docklands in, I think, the NAB office. And Ron was the first person who greeted me. And like, who is this person? He was wearing a three-piece suit. He was extremely polished. He just had so much presence. And I couldn't even look him in the eye. I was and that's a reflection of me. It wasn't that Ron is intimidating. I mean, he does have a powerful presence, but I felt small. I felt like I wasn't worthy to
Why did
take
you
up
feel
his
that?
because that's a reflection of me playing small, me thinking I don't want anyone to see me.
Ah.
And I always got told, Elinor, you're so intimidating. So when I did, then I internalized that and I shrunk. Because heaven
Do you
forbid I
know
would
what? The
make
same
someone
thing
else feel
happened to me in
uncomfortable.
the police. I feel so much connection with you because I was told, like, you've got to tone it down, you've got to do this, you've got to be this kind of
Yeah,
person. This is who you've got to be. So
yeah.
actually, when I came into the recruitment industry, I'd actually gone from my late teens and early 20s performing magic all around the world, being a performer. And then
Wow.
I kind of in my late sort of mid to late 20s was almost I wasn't that confident person because I'd been told, no, you shouldn't be speaking out like this. No, you've got to do this. You've got to keep the opinions to yourself. And
Yeah.
actually, what I found about, and sorry, I don't normally talk about myself so much during podcasts, but I think you're
Oh,
making
please
so many
do.
relevant points. If you are a thought leader, or you are someone that can make these positive changes and put me in my own business, and I just it took off so quickly, and I think
Hmm.
I've kind of had similar success to you, but almost at the start, I was very shy because for one reason or another. But I think you make a really good point there. When was it that you started feeling, these feelings more of empowerment? Then did they come your mentors help, or were they quite soon after you suddenly? Was it like a light bulb moment where you thought, "I am worthy, I am great, I deserve this, I want to puff my chest out"?
It started when I
Mm.
conceived my vision, and I knew that if I could conceive this vision, it means that there's something in it for me. Because even before the vision, and this was I think maybe 2017 or in and around that time, I started being attracted to the personal development world, and all of a sudden, my shelves would start filling with books. The Think and Grow Rich and
But
How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like I started being
the seven
attracted
habits of
to it.
highly effective people, they're
Yes,
all there, they're stacking up.
yes. So I
Good
started knowing that,
fragrance.
you know what,
Mm.
there might be something in it for me. Like, subconsciously, I was attracted to entrepreneurship and wealth and influence and impact and success, but I couldn't actually articulate it. So, and then I also thought, this vision, I don't know how it's going to come, but I cannot give up on it because it's me. It was the essence of me. And what happened, before I met Ron, this was a few months before that, I articulated excerpts of my vision to my then mentor, and he discounted it completely, tore it to shreds and said, this isn't for you. And if you want to become an entrepreneur and if you want to lift the income on your ceiling, then you have to go and do it all tomorrow and just stay in your job. And,
Mm.
maybe in 20 years you'll become a partner. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound fantastic at all. I
Um,
don't want to sign up to that.
I guess the interesting thing, just stopping to talk about this,
Yeah.
before so he was your previous mentor. You were happy with him before, and there was an alignment, and you thinking he was the right person.
There was a point in time in that person, obviously, I'm
Oh,
grateful for everything
yeah.
that they did, but then I started growing,
Thinking
and
bigger, much
that's
bigger.
right. That's right.
Mm.
And I couldn't even, I remember a few conversations where I would try and articulate these thoughts, but it just wasn't working. So, yes, you do outgrow mentors because if they're not growing with you, and what the risk was in that is that they had one vision for me. This is the only thing that they saw, and it was
Mm.
actually self-serving. It had nothing to do with me. So there was friction, and of course that relationship ended, and I'm very glad that it did, because you need to let go of people of your past in order to let people of
You
your
do.
future come in, right?
Exactly. I found myself becoming incredibly lonely when was
Oh
about a
yes.
year into my business. I found that all my original friends, and I never had loads of friends, but what would happen was I remember one distinct time I went into London for a meal, and my friend was telling me about all her problems. There was a few things going on, and then I told her about how I was really struggling with this business, like it was just. And she sort of looked at me and said, "What are you moaning about? You've got everything." And I sort of thought, "Whoa, hang on a minute. I that's so not how I internally feel." I then found myself becoming very, very, very lonely. And the podcast for me was, well, I didn't realize it at the time, but then I started meeting all these amazing people on the same frequency. And, I went for a similar experience to you. I lost loads of my friends, not because I consciously
Yes.
wanted to, but just because I felt that there wasn't any relatability. And then I kind of thought to myself, 3 years in, I've got this amazing multi-million pound business, but I've got no friends. Now I need to start investing in my personal life. So I get it. I so hear you there.
It is very lonely, and that was part of the
Mm,
friction that I experienced at first. Was you outgrow the people around you, and your circle becomes very, very small. And like have a very, very small circle, despite having acquired a public profile, and we're happy to be around people, and we get energy of that. I actually have a
mm.
very small inner circle, because
So do I. Yeah.
as a thought leader, we're very good at spending time by ourselves, because it's our thinking which connects, and we need a lot of time to be with our own thoughts and create and you know translate our thoughts to impact other people. But yes, it is quite a lonely journey, and it's not something that I anticipated, but again, as you did, you embrace it very quickly.
You do, and again, I agree with what you're saying about internalizing those thoughts and how you can deliver those thoughts to people to make an impact in their life. Not just delivering them, but also how you can talk in the same language as somebody and put it in a way that they're going to kind of digest, process, and get the positive outcome that they need. What have you really learned since going on this journey? Then, obviously, you've got so much going on at the moment, and kudos to you. 50,000 downloads on a podcast, I know myself, is amazing, and you've had all this success so far. What have you kind of learned along the way? Has there been kind of any big lessons that have stood out for you that you'd be happy to talk about?
Oh, where do I begin? Well, in no particular order. The most important thing was knowing myself. I mean, people don't know who they are. And if you don't know who they are, then what is your actual basis of decision making? So I actually had to know my person in order to know what it is that will bring me fulfillment. What's my zone of genius? And how do I actually use that to create the impact and influence and also the income that I want to see for myself? And really knowing yourself on the macro and the micro, and then translating that into a brand was, an 8-month process. But again, I had just enough awareness and self awareness of who I was in order to roll the dice and say, you know what, I'm going to step into oblivion here. Prior to Ron, I only ever dabbled in, maybe a $300 course or something like that. And they all, fizzled and did nothing for me. And, working with Ron, that was the biggest personal investment that I made on myself, and I did it. So, I learned to roll the dice on myself, and I'll always back myself. And when you are going, as you know, and you are familiar with, whether it's launching a business, a podcast, a book, you don't know from the outset what it's going to look like. I mean, you're not guaranteed anything as an entrepreneur. I can put out what
Mm,
I think to
no.
be the best podcast in the world. I might have 0 downloads. I'm not promised anything. I'm not promised a book, a client, nothing. So, you really have to learn to trust the process. It's about starting and actually taking massive and immediate action. And it is those people who, they might have talent, but if they're not taking action and if they're not actually putting in, hustle and heart to move forward and get what they want and be in a constant state of creation and delivering value to other people, you do get left behind. You do get rendered obsolete by the marketplace. So, that's one of
Mm.
the things that I did have to learn. And as we were saying before, it is lonely. And yes, I am very grateful that, I was definitely meant to be a thought leader. Like everything in my life, obviously, has, I was born for this. I'm an only child. So I'm very good at spending a lot of time by myself and creating, and I can sit there and I can execute for as long as I need to. Like, I've always been that diligent, hardworking kid who could,
Mm,
you know,
mm.
sit by themselves because they also didn't have a lot of friends. But it's about knowing again what it is that you want, who you are. And yes, it is so very lonely because you cannot relate to people who think in boxes. You can't relate to people who aren't growing, to people who want to stay with their problems, like they love their problems. But you do have to learn to let go, because only then can you have aligned people coming to your life. And I've also learned so much about business. I mean, even if I were to have to start from scratch, what I know now compared to what I know about business and entrepreneurship is phenomenal. And I'm
Yeah,
addicted to,
yeah.
the insight that comes with entrepreneurship. It's just incredible.
I literally think in the last 4 minutes you've given so many valuable lessons. I was going to keep picking up on each one, but you've just said so much. It's kind of blown me away. I totally agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think for me, if I'd been in this position, because I always knew I wanted to run my own business, but I think I had to go through so many horrible life experiences and
Mm,
so many awful things that happened in my life where I kept bouncing back stronger. And even, sometimes I say, "Oh, why did I join the police? I didn't like it." But then I say, "Well, would I be where I am now had I not been
yes.
in that situation?" No, I probably wouldn't have. And it's you pick up all these repertoire skills, and I think I arrived at that same place like you. So really valuable lessons you've said there, really, and really, really interesting as well. So you've also wrote a number one best-selling book, Constructing Your Career. Tell us a bit about that. How did that kind of all come about, and what can the book provide to people? I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming this is available to anyone, and there's pearls of wisdoms no matter what sector you're in.
Absolutely. Of course, I wrote it with the construction industry in mind, but I've had, multiple podcast interviews and, someone who was in Las Vegas and she pulled out a copy of my book and I was blown away. Like, my book is physically in Las Vegas. I wrote it from my humble Lisa laptop in Melbourne, and it's shown up on screen in Las Vegas, and she loved the lessons. I mean, if you take out the construction context, yes, the lessons are globally applicable because conventional career intelligence is outdated, and it ensures, it guarantees that whoever adopts and sings the same song as other people, they are leaving opportunity on the table. What we see when we talk about career success is it's not holistic. Success starts from the inside out. You can't just give people the tactics. For example, here's 10 ways to write a great CV. Fantastic. That will not guarantee you anything. Definitely not career success and definitely not
You know
employment.
how to write the CV, but you know it's deeper than that. It's about selling yourself. It's about really understanding what value it is you can add.
Yeah,
A great CV is one
exactly.
thing, but you got.
Exactly.
I'm an expert in CVs, and get me started on CVs, and we'll be here for about another 3 hours. So I agree with you. It's something that's coming up for you. It sounds like you're learning so much. I'm already sensing that this is the first book of a sequel.
How did you know? Who told you?
Because there's so much, I'm guessing, that you've
Who's
already thought of that isn't contained within this book. So I'm
who's been
I'm
talking to you?
sensing there's another. I've been talking to absolutely no one, I can assure you, but I'm assuming there's another one on the way.
Oh, 100%. And, I had to write this book, and I do believe that everyone has a book within them. And I'll never get the
Mm.
opportunity to mentor or reach every single person in the industry, but a book can. And I wrote this book to be the mentor, the guide, the friend that I need when I needed someone who wouldn't just tell me to stay small and to be like, oh, no, it's okay, it's fine, just keep on doing what you're doing. I wrote this book to really challenge people and disrupt their perceptions, but I've also pieced together what it actually means to, build the foundations on the greatest project that you'll ever get to work on, which is, of course, you. Because people in the construction industry will dedicate their whole life to working on projects external to themselves. But then there's this entity called your career, which gets no intention and no attention. And yet this is the vehicle that is actually the one which is meant to provide you with income and fulfillment and performance. So, it's really shifted the focus. It's really, I've really held up a mirror for people to look at themselves
Mm.
when they read the book. And, sometimes I pick it up and I turn to a page and I think, oh, wow, I wrote this. This is really good.
And it's really interesting the way you say, you are the greatest construction project in life. And I'm sure there's all sorts of puns I can say off the back of this about strong foundations, building upwards.
Yeah, well, that's exactly
Yeah,
what the book is, based on. It's,
right.
this is how you build a building, and then I've related that to the different elements of career success, right
Oh,
from design, planning, programming, right through to performance, maintenance, and practical completion.
having good aesthetics, making sure
The
colours
facade,
match.
yes.
It goes to it
Yes.
can go as far as wide as you want. Tell us a bit about because I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this show who like you, I've had similar experiences with this podcast. I got a message from someone the other day in Ohio about an episode which apparently really resonated home to them, and it's the beauty of kind of the world we live in some ways is people can really get advice from all over the place now. So let's say someone's out there at the moment, they are thinking about starting a business, maybe they're working for someone else, and it is a tough time no matter where you are at the moment. But what advice would you give to someone maybe thinking about starting their own business, or really taking control of their mindset and their career? What would the Elinor advice be?
Number one, identify what it is that you really, really, really want against all societal expectations. And that may seem like a really simple question, but I ask this just about daily. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, oh, that's a really hard question. And I also, once upon a time, I could not answer that question. The only thing that I said when I was once posed with that question was I wanted to work on site. I mean, what, for 40 years, for 50 years, for 60 years? It meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing because people don't even have the audacity to dream anymore. They are just so
Mm,
conditioned to put
mm.
their dreams back into the tiny box instead of saying, you know what,
Why is that? Do you think? Why is that?
it's the systems and it's the society in which people grow up in. I mean,
Mm.
how often do people actually are they exposed to limitless people? I mean, I'm lucky that yes, of course, I have parents who, said anything that you want, just put your mind to it, you can achieve. Like they never provided any boundaries. But other than that, I still went through the academic system. Then you go through the university system. No one is there to tell you. And then you go into the corporate place. No one is going to actually tell you, you know what, anything that you want and anything that you put your mind to, you can master your mind, you can create anything that you want.
Mm, mm.
Who wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, this is what I'm going to say? There are very few people who have the courage to actually break out of that convention for themselves in the first place. And that's a difference. I see content online all the time. People who, one day they're a marketing manager, the next day they're a life coach. I mean, what problem have you actually solved for yourself in your life? So people don't even have the audacity to think outside their own worldview, their own limited perception of what is possible because they're not actually
Mm.
surrounded by it. When you
Yeah.
have that vision, you start seeking it, and that's when things start to align.
I think that's. I agree with everything you're saying there. I think sometimes I forget the fact that I'm so open-minded that that's kind of what allows opportunity to come my way. But
Mhm.
I think that's something that I've always had an element of. But it's kind of I've become more and more and more open-minded, and
Mhm.
actually listening to people as well. Actually
Yes.
giving people. We rush around so much. I realised a few years ago how often do I actually stop to taking exactly what someone's trying to tell me and delve deeper on that. And that was another life lesson for me. I'm very good with my mouth, but I was less good with my ears.
Yes.
And as soon as I started letting my ears do more of the work, I started learning more. But that was, a tough lesson to learn. Sort of lastly, I could talk to you all day. Our time is sadly coming to an end on this episode, but I think we
Already?
must do it is. I'm so sad, but
Wow.
we must do another episode soon, and we'll talk about that.
Let's.
So someone's thinking about starting a business. They're thinking about, right, I want to go for it too. I'm feeling empowered from what I've heard here. What would be your top advice to thinking about starting a business and just getting out there?
Find the person in the marketplace. It doesn't have to be your marketplace. I mean, my mentor, Ron, he's from the wealth industry. I'm teaching him about construction and he's teaching me about everything else. But you find the person that has the results that you want in terms of life and lifestyle, and again, results, and that they're also heading in the direction that you want to go. And you move heaven and earth if you have to make sure that you work with them. Because if you want to get to the top, you can bypass a lot of the pain, a lot of the challenges that actually comes. And one thing that I'm very time sensitive. What I've learnt with Ron and what I have achieved in the last, let's call it 2 years or 1.5 years, It maybe would have taken me 10 years had I even known where to look, what to look for, and how to actually apply it. All things going well, that was never going to happen. So, okay, how can I actually bypass the time? I need a mentor. I don't want to figure this all out by myself. I don't have time. I need to move quickly. What can I actually do to get the same results in the least amount of time?
Clever shortcuts.
Exactly. And this requires, yes, an investment. But the irony is people who want to get into business, they don't even want to invest in themselves. Yet they're waiting for clients, or they think that clients will come and, spend $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is. You actually have to, even when you start a business, there's startup capital. When you started out, it wasn't a zero-sum game. There was an investment that actually went into it.
Yeah,
So
there was.
you either bypass the time or you just slowly trot along playing the small game, or you can actually come and play with the big leagues.
Oh, and it's fun playing at the big leagues. I do
Yes.
agree. I do agree. Eleanor, where can people go to if they want to find out more about you or they want to purchase Constructing Your Career? Where can they go to and visit?
Your audience is more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Elinor Moshe, and on Instagram at Elinor Moshe _. My website is elinormoshe.com, and my book is globally available, Constructing Your Career, on Amazon.
There we go. You heard it first. And I would so recommend buying a copy. It sounds like an absolutely fantastic read. It's already on my list of books to read. Thank you, Eleanor, for joining us. It was fascinating.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. Onwards and upwards in your career and to your success as well.
Thank you. That was Elinor Moshe from Melbourne in Australia. Really interesting. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.